Since the start of the war, thousands of Americans, Europeans, and people from 50 other countries have traveled to Ukraine to fight against Russian forces. I met with one of their infantry squads at their safe house near the front line while they were getting ready to rotate into the trenches. My goal in this episode is to find out what life is really like for the average foreign infantryman in Ukraine, to learn the type of tactics and equipment that they find useful, and we'll follow them to see how they conduct the dangerous infiltration and exfiltration from the zero line. What the purpose of sort of this building is that we're in.
This is a safe house that we launch out of. We're doing rotations for defense at the moment.
So I can't tell you exactly where we were located because GUR intelligence in Ukraine is hush-hush about operational security. So what I'll say is that we were somewhere on the front in eastern Ukraine, and we'll use this random section to illustrate the logistics of the trip.
Especially because the Russians are actually very, very good on tracking people, tracking videos, pictures, and information. I've had multiple friends who's done some stupid stuff in a safe house when they were living at the front line, and then boom, they have a missile straight into their house.
From the outside, you'd never be able to tell that the building we were in was a safe house for troops. Inside, though, there was a whole room filled with a massive arsenal of AT-4 rocket launchers, dozens of FPV drones stacked up, sniper rifles, 40mm grenades, belt-fed machine guns, and just thousands of small arms rounds. It was legit every infantryman's dream come true. The majority of the weaponry I saw there was Western. You got your M4s, SCAR rifles, M249 style belt-fed machine guns, and while it might seem like a lot, the trench battle that they were about to walk into would require every bit of it. But before we get into that, the only way I was able to continue to produce content while I was away is thanks to Odoo, the all-in-one business management solution that helps anyone starting a business take care of all the businessy stuff that nobody loves to do. Whether it's accounting for product inventory, everything from sales to invoicing and HR. If your small or large business needs it done, Odoo has got you covered. Odoo has over 12 million users and over 5,000 employees across 19 offices worldwide. They have 45 easy-to-use applications that tailor to all industries, businesses large and small, and are ideal for whether you're working a one-off project or you're on an ongoing business operation. My favorite thing about these guys is that when they say the first application is free, they really mean it. The first app is free for life. Just go over to the website today and pick one out. You don't even need to drop a credit card number. If you like what the first app does for you, spoiler alert, I think you will, then access to the whole shebang starts for around $20 a month per user. Just click the link in the description or the pinned comment below. Head over to odoo.com today to learn more and find out why they're such a great sponsor for this program. The Foreign Legion is known for being involved in some of the most brutal combat in the war, from the defense of Kyiv to the Battle of Bakhmut. As foreign volunteers, they seek out some of the most dangerous operations, even operating behind enemy lines. Many of the guys I talked to were prior US military, but a few were civilians before they joined, like their Norwegian squad leader, callsign Bucket. What can you tell me about like the Russians' tactics when they're assaulting your positions? What are you seeing them try to do?
Then now as we get closer to the winter, it's more or less, there's still assaults going on, but that's more or less, we want to get to this point before the winter so we can dig in and prepare for another offensive. So that's mostly what they try to do now, just take something and then they're just going to stop there, dig in, and then when the heat is coming again, they want to try keep going. When we go on deployment, I have to make sure all my guys are prepped to go out. We have the necessary weapons, kit, food and water and other supplies needed for what we go out for, and then get the right sort of intel, brief all my guys. If they have questions I can't answer, I need to then talk to command again. Okay, we need more answers on this. I get the feedback and make sure to brief my guys properly. And then overall, when we're on the ground, I then have command. I'm the overall IC, but I have my 2 IC and I have my fire team leaders trying to do the best to make sure everybody gets back home safe and we can do the objective. Because like right now, we're only working defense because that's mostly what's happening overall in Ukraine.
This was what the squad was doing right now. They were preparing to head back out to the trenches. They had spent the last week off duty, and now it was their turn to go back to the zero line. Their main task, above all else, was to hold the line and to defend against daily attempts by Russian infantry to assault their fortifications.
Definitely. They're there, they're active. They've shot at me, I've shot at them. We know you're here and I know you're there type of thing. My position was hit multiple times with the FPVs and grenade drops. I've had some armor in the area, a lot of mortars and artillery. Got a lucky burst off and took out a drone last time I was out.
Is there a way to mitigate against the drones? Do you have like electronic warfare, jamming devices?
Just shoot it.
It's vulnerable to bullets.
Yeah, exactly. They're not bulletproof.
I tried to get a better sense of what life was like for them out there.
So my biggest role on the ground right now is we go into positions that the command and HQ element has been briefed about. Okay, this is the position, you're going to go in, you're going to hold it with local forces. We go in and we see, okay, this position is So what we do then, together as a team, we come together up with a plan, and then we improve our fighting positions. If we have to dig, we dig. It's a lot of digging in this kind of war, so we make it more, in one way you can say, bulletproof, very protected, and that we can in a good way defend our position.
Well, my call sign here is Mayhem, and I'm a light or medium machine gunner, depending on who you ask. I work with the Delta Knights, part of Gore.
Tell then my guys, okay, I want a position here, I want a blindage here, another position here. We need the trenches like this, we need the overhead cover here, and then, okay, we need a heavy weapon system there, we need a heavy weapon system there. You can have a marksman there, and then delegate all that kind of stuff on the ground.
Even not, the drones can, you order certain stuff, the drones can fly in and drop. You need a box of screws, you just have a box of screws gets dropped by a drone, you know, if we have it in supply. Yeah, they resupply points like that quite often. So, yeah, some of the building materials will come in like that. Some will drive in with and carry to point.
I'm trying to imagine what it's like. Like the other day we went on a mission with this unit that was doing drone operations, and it just looked so different when I actually experienced what they went through. It was nothing like how I would have imagined it to be. So for this trench warfare, like how far is it between the Russian line and your line that you guys are shooting at each other?
That also is very ups and down compared to like visibility on the ground, because some areas you have wood line to wood line and then an open field in the middle, and it can be 500 meters in between, kilometers in between because of the fields. Then you can have more into towns, cities. It can be a house here, 50 meters, secondary house. You can be fighting in wood lines. When I was back in Crimea, we had our trench line, little hilltop. On the other of the hilltop, the Russians were, that was 40 meters away. So it's very, very different on the AOs you're in and what you're fighting in. If it's urban, woodlines or forest, has a lot to say on how close you can get to them.
I was surprised to learn infantry push out from the safety of the trenches here. They do recon missions to see if they can spot where the Russian forces are coming at them from and where their defensive fortifications are located. When I arrived, they informed me that they were facing new threats from Russian drones that had started using new tactics. They were dropping landmines all over their infiltration route. Fuck that noise. I noticed that the building housed 2 squads of about 18 guys. Major points to them because it didn't smell that bad as I was expecting. Maybe my old unit that I was with was just a bunch of filthy dogs. Now, these 2 squads take turns rotating to a trench position, a whole section of which they're responsible for. We're about 40 kilometers from there now. Many of the guys I met were prior service US military who had gotten out since then, but there were also a number of civilians. I found each of them had their own personal reason for being there. When foreigners volunteer for combat in Ukraine, they aren't just mixed in with a bunch of Ukrainian-speaking units at random. They're all funneled to the International Legion. There are Russian-speaking units, Belarus units, and English-speaking units that have a large degree of autonomy in how they operate.
Something that specifically about the Foreign Legion that really always interests me is like, this war is in Ukraine. It's so far from where we grew up in America. What motivated you?
There's a couple different things. Honestly, I've kind of struggled since I got out of the Marines in 2009, and I'd say about 2011, 2012, my theologies changed, my politics changed a bit, and I started to have quite a bit of guilt about my role in Iraq and didn't believe that I should have been there, we should have been there, or anything. And I kind of feel like, in a karmic way, this kind of cancels that out. I'm fighting a just cause, defending a people rather than encroaching on them. Plus, I've had a lot of jobs. I've been a prison officer, a trash man, owned and operated a restaurant at one point in time, lived in 4 different countries, and none of it really stuck. I've only been here since August, but already I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Feel at home again. Everything makes a lot more sense, even though I don't speak the language. Somehow life makes more sense here than it did anytime since I got out in 2009. That's the most honest answer I can give you.
I instantly connected with these guys personally, probably because we shared a lot in common, partly because we were both US veterans. It was an interesting change of pace from the rest of my journey, being able to speak English with all the soldiers. My time in the service was nothing compared to Mayhem's. It was a boring occupation phase of the war, but I did see my share of corruption, waste of time, lives, and resources to be skeptical of war.
What motivated you? What was the reason why?
So the main reason and the biggest reason I came is what Russia did against all the civilians and all the children. Because it's not a war where you go military on military. This is more, they go directly towards the civilians. And they target everything, civilian infrastructure, people, children. So that made me want to come and fight. And then when I could see it with my own eyes as well, what was actually happening here, instead of just reading it online, I found out that, okay, I need to be here, I can do a change. When I first came, I didn't know that I was gonna go directly into a combat role because I didn't have the experience. But then after training, I found out, okay, this worked. And then when I finally had combat experience, it worked out.
The foreign fighters come here for different reasons. A recent article by the New York Times suggested money was one of the draws, claiming that these troops earn around $2,500 a month. The website for the Foreign Legion says that their pay can range between $500 to $4,800, depending on where you're deployed and what kind of experience you have and what unit you end up in. These numbers are the same as regular Ukrainian soldiers, and the average frontline pay I hear is about $3,000 per month. But the guys I spoke to, it didn't sound like paycheck was the reason they were there.
The news pretty religiously here and looking on that. They're definitely a different sort of enemy, definitely not. I mean, America's been afraid of them since World War II, and I don't know why, after seeing them for the past 2 years struggle to take Ukraine, I don't know why we were ever afraid of them. And they only have one tactic as far as I can tell, and that's just meat wave, just hope that we don't have enough ammo. It's pretty much their only strategy here, is just send as many people out of position as possible, and that's all I've seen so far. So this is Mariana. If you're watching and you're American, you'd think of the SAW, the M249. It's the exact same weapon, only this one is 7.62 millimeter. So it's definitely a bit heavier, and I'm carrying 100 rounds rather than the 200 I would have had in Iraq in the drum. I don't think it's possible to carry 200 on this. I put a foregrip on the bottom here, makes it a lot easier for kneeling and standing shooting. And I have an ACOG with an aim point on top. So my ACOG is for pretty much anything over 100, and I can switch to the aim point for anything close range. It's pretty nice. Even though it's heavier, it's very well balanced. So if I have to do CQB with it, I can. It's definitely not designed for that, but I can do it. It's pretty nice. She's been good to me so far. I've been good to her. It's a good weapon, and I'm happy with it. As my secondary weapon, this is Mod, and this is a SCAR L, so that's the 5.56 version of the SCAR.
Do you take this both out with you?
Typically not.
Just one or the other?
No, it's mission dependent. My main role is a machine gunner. There is missions at times that would be better than a machine gun, so I'd take that instead.
The living conditions I observed at the house were not luxurious. We're talking a puss pad on the floor and then some sleeping bags on top of that. Soldiers lived out of 2 rucksacks next to them, and some guys chose to use military-style cots instead. There was a small kitchen that they could cook in if they wanted to, stocked with noodles, although the pizza boxes around there suggested that they had better options available to them. Little things like pizza can go a long way in motivating a soldier.
Yeah, so when we're here, we're pretty much off. As long as our weapons are clean, our gear's ready to go, we have an understanding of what our mission is, and everything's set. You're pretty much free to, go eat pizza and have a beer or two every once in a while.
It was strange, surreal feeling in this war to see tracer rounds being fired off a couple hundred meters away from me while I was doing a mundane task like filling up at a gas station or eating at a restaurant. Things that you've done 1,000,000 times before back in the States, but here they take on a different meaning. Even routine things in life are interrupted by reminders of the war when the power goes out or water stops working, and you sit there and you think to yourself, oh yeah, there's a superpower trying to take over this country right now.
Without giving too much information away, right now we get up early in the morning, get in a truck, get dropped off somewhere, walk into our position, and then right now we're digging trenches, building bunkers, manning a 50 cal machine gun, shooting down drones wherever we can, and just making sure that the enemy's not moving. Do a little bit of recon, not super far. I don't think we've got more than like 1.4 clicks out in any direction, just seeing what we can see, noting things down, and making sure that everybody else in the area knows that we're in the area and we know where they are, pretty much. Do that for 5 days and then come back here.
I can't say what time they were headed to the front, but it was sometime very early in the morning. Several of the guys I ran into in the Foreign Legion recognized that I was from Task and Purpose and came over to say hi. They were former US Army infantrymen who, once they got out, they wanted to put their skills to good use. The Legion has changed a lot since the start of the war, when it was more chaotic. Now they even have a website that makes it easier for foreigners to join. The first thing you see when you go to the website is that it emphasizes that they're there to join in on the defense of Europe, as well as showcasing the major battles they've fought in. There seems to be a lot more structure to the Legion now, from what I could tell, where you have to sign a 3-year contract with them, but according to the website, you're able to terminate it and leave after 6 months if you want. That's actually the single major privilege that I hear about foreign fighters have. They can quit and go home whenever they want, even though the country's in martial law right now. One of the listed restrictions to trying to join the Legion is that you need to have no criminal record in any country, likely to weed out any people who are just trying to escape from their lives in other nations. I was surprised to learn from looking around there that they offer $350,000 to your family if you're killed in action, because I was under the impression that foreigners didn't have any benefits. The International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine, also known as the Foreign Legion, was established in February 27, 2022, only a few days after Russia's full-scale invasion. The organization has moved from being part of the Territorial Defense Forces to then being under the command of the Ukrainian Ground Forces and operating under GUR, which is the intelligence agency similar to like the United States version of the CIA. I've since learned that it might be a little bit more confusing than that the Foreign Legion that I was talking about there might be separate from the Foreign Legion that is under GUR, so just keep that in mind. There's different Foreign Legions and International Legions in Ukraine. Their foreign minister stated that they received 20,000 applications from people all over the world who tried to enlist at the very start of the war. This number has often been incorrectly cited throughout the media as there being 20,000 foreign fighters in Ukraine. The actual number is a state secret, of course, but it's believed to be between 3,000 and 4,000. Macer Gifford, who served in the Legion, said, quote, "The Legion was always going to have problems because it was started amid great trauma, but I think over time, the wheat had been weeded from the chaff, and what's left now is quite a productive group of people. History will judge them, not all as heroes and villains, but as individuals who did what they could." End quote. If you want to see an uncensored exclusive episode covering the casualty evacuation and combat medics that I met when I was in Ukraine, that's going live on Pepperbox TV on Tuesday, Friday 11th. Click the link in the description for a 14-day free trial if you just want to watch that episode and then cancel. If you want to stick around after that, it's $7.99 a month. It really helps to support the independent journalism that I create, and it gets you access to my weekly combat analysis series. What I can tell you is that the fighting here that they're involved in, this squad, is difficult trench warfare. They are on part of the front line where they've had time to dig in deep, and pretty soon we would be headed with them to the infiltration point. Watching them prepare was fascinating. It was like watching someone's routine the night before the day of school. You lay out your favorite clothing, you make sure your backpack's all ready, you don't want to forget any of your notebooks or anything. One of the Foreign Legion soldiers I met was call sign Cossack. He's famous here. He's a British native who'd been fighting on Ukraine's side since before the invasion. Then, he was a POW held in captivity by Russia for months. I'd actually covered the news of his capture here on the channel when it first happened years ago, and he remembered me doing that report. It's kind of bizarre feeling for me when I met someone that I've covered before from the news.
I've been in the military here for like 4 years, like before the invasion. So like I've seen like how their propaganda works. There was like times where the Russian side, they would like make articles about myself and like the other foreigners in my unit, but it would be like the most outlandish or like absurd like stuff. And then eventually when I did get captured, their own intelligence guys that were interrogating me after I'd got like tortured and beaten, they were asking me like the most crazy questions. One of them was that I was CIA or MI6. The other was that I was like SAS. But when he said that to me, like I literally just said to him, like do I look like SAS? Like I'm fat. Like how could I be SAS?
He was really friendly and easy to work with. I could tell Cossack had been through it. The man had for sure suffered at the hands of the Russians while he was a prisoner of war. How he found the courage to continue to drive troops to the infiltration point and continue to serve was beyond my comprehension. This is a reality that captured foreign fighters face because Moscow claims that they're mercenaries and therefore not afforded the rights of prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention. For example, Australian-born soldier fighting for Ukraine was recently captured fighting near Kramatorsk. About 7 Australians reportedly have died in the war, but he's the first one to be captured. So Russian soldiers on video recorded themselves as they smacked him around and beat him up, something I can't show you here due to YouTube restrictions. But when foreign fighters are captured, they're often used as propaganda pieces by Russia. Diplomatic efforts are usually made to try to bring them back in prisoner exchanges. There have been numerous articles written how Moscow has painted these soldiers as mercenaries in an attempt to prevent them from having certain international combatant rights. Giles, a Russian expert at Chatham House, said Russia does this because they can treat these people as criminals and prosecute them. He says, quote, "Often these people have signed up with Ukrainian armed forces and are not mercenaries in any recognized sense of the term. This pretense by Russia that they're there as mercenaries allows them to put them through a sham legal trial and on occasion sentence them to death."
Usually we only go out with green tip, but now they're giving us tracers as well because the drone activity is so high, and whenever we shoot at the drones with tracers, the drones go away. So we just need to make sure that everyone who's going out with 5.6 actually have tracers on them so we can get rid of the drones. Because
Do you guys have any thermals?
drones?
Thermal optics for the...
We have a couple, like just handheld. We don't have any thermal optics itself because it's quite expensive to get. We had a couple, but some of them got lost or broken during a previous mission. That was quite difficult. So we had to leave a lot of kit there because we had to exfil very fast. So now we're just, from what we have to just rebuild everything up again.
So I wanted to give this to you as a gift and a donation from Armacite Thermal Optic. So
That's quite nice. That will be very, very useful.
I've heard from other people that like you guys, it makes it easier to shoot down drones.
Yeah,
So
this will be very, very useful.
this is yours now, and put it to good use if you get a
Thank you so
chance.
much.
Of course.
Thank you.
I had brought with me a Sidekick thermal optic from Armacite that I knew was really good for spotting landmines that often give off a hot thermal signature because they heat up faster in the sun and compared to the soil around them, so they stick out when you look at them through thermals. I thought the least I could do was give the Foreign Legion this thermal optic to help them stay safe and detect these drones that are trying to drop mines all over them. Bucket and Mayhem could put this Armacite optic to better use than I could. I heard them refer to this mysterious mission a couple of times when I was there, and I could tell that they lost a lot of guys in this incident and that it's something that was very sensitive to them and they didn't want to get into deeper.
They of course outnumber us with manpower, but the manpower itself is not the biggest threat on the positions we are in right now. It's the drones, FPVs, drone drops. That's the biggest threat.
Being able to maneuver so precisely that they were able to sneak into a trench, flying along the trench line and into the defensive fortification where the infantry are. They're not as easy to train on as you might think flying these drones around. The controls are extremely sensitive, which takes weeks to months to really get used to and master. It's not like piloting the commercial, easy-to-buy drones that you get on Amazon. I asked if I could try flying one, and they said no because they didn't want me to break it. Fair enough, I get it. You might be surprised to learn that when it comes to the Foreign Legion, a lot or nearly all of their equipment is self-funded. Don't act like that's crazy. I know a lot of you guys listening to this right now also have a badass self-funded arsenal at home yourself. So these guys do have a GoFundMe for their accounts for donations so that they can buy new weapons, optics, or even cold weather gear for themselves. If you want to check that out, there's a link in the description. So I geeked out with the guys over their weapons and equipment, my plate carrier, boots, and most of my clothing was from 511 Tactical Gear. The most useful thing that 511 sent me was the backpack, which made it really easy for me to move around fast. They were kind enough to actually donate all that gear to me for this trip, so if you're looking for any tactical equipment or rugged baggage, I definitely recommend checking them out. A lot of people were also asking me where I got my high-speed, low-cut SF-style helmet from, my Kevlar. That was provided to me, donated to me for free from Hardhead veterans. I really appreciate that. I made great use of it when I was over there, so thank you guys. I spent the night at the safe house in a sleeping bag on the floor with the guys. I barely got any sleep, partly because of my nerves and partly because my interpreter was snoring the whole night next to me right in my ear. I really liked the guy though, so I didn't want to wake him up. He had legit been a lifesaver on the trip, so I let him sleep. I found him through United 24 Media, who got me access to the Foreign Legion. Definitely subscribe to their YouTube channel for more insider intel. I dozed off for what felt like 2 seconds when I heard alarms going off on different phones around me. So for me, this was the second day almost in a row that I've been running on no sleep after the vampire drone mission that I had just been on. So the guys around me started getting ready. They were pulling on pants, grabbing machine guns, and going outside for a smoke. I could feel how quickly the vibe had changed from relaxed to go time. The type of conversations that the infantry were having was very familiar to me. Everyone was cracking jokes and poking fun at one another, trying to lighten the tense mood. They had about 10 minutes to get ready to jump into the vehicles from here.
Yeah, have you seen the new night vision they have?
Yeah, the ENVGBs.
Yeah.
The enhanced night vision binocular. It's got thermals mixed with NVGs.
Yes, that is quite sexy.
Yeah, I'd rather those night vision goggles than healthcare.
The way that these rotations work is that we drive out to what's called the infiltration point, which is about roughly 10 kilometers from the zero line positions. There are at least 2 trenches from there, a close trench to the enemy and a further back trench line. Different units and regions have different tactics for accomplishing this infiltration. Some take pickup trucks, some take tracked armored vehicles. There's really a trade-off to every approach. Armored vehicles attract more drones, for instance. There is a long history of foreign fighters that want to head into battle. In some cases, it's considered heroic in hindsight. Men like George Orwell volunteered on what's considered the right side of history in the Spanish Civil War, fighting against Nazi-backed Franco, prior to it morphing into World War II. These foreign fighters I saw, they see themselves in a similar fashion as fighting on the front to help prevent this from turning into another world war.
What happens if you step on one of the butterfly mines?
They can blow up your whole foot, or half of your foot, or yeah, around between half of your foot to your toes to hold your foot, and then you have to amputate. And they're evil because they're like, let's say, maximum 5 centimeters big. Toe pops. Yeah,
that's it.
They're quite nasty.
And they have different colors too for different like terrains.
Yeah.
So like they'll use the coyote brown ones if it's out in the field, but they use the green ones in the grass.
Yeah.
So like they make sure that they're obscured.
It's very hard to see them.
Literally like that fucking big.
They drop them into the trenches.
No, well, I haven't experienced that they dropped them into the trenches.
But the tactics they use once at the trenches is very different than what us US soldiers are used to.
They only have one tactic as far as I can tell, and that's just meat wave. Just hope that we don't have enough ammo. Is pretty much their only strategy here, is just send as many people out of position as possible. And that's all I've seen so far. So
Are you able to call for any kind of like artillery support?
Yep.
Are you able to call for not air support, but like drone support?
believe it or not, every once in a while, yeah, you can get air support. It's rare, but it's definitely possible. Drones we can call up. We have 60, 80s, 120s, just like you would anywhere else. I'm not sure if we have 155s here, but yeah, we have fire support. It's definitely not the same level that you'd expect from the American military, but there's nothing in the world that's the American military, so.
This was something that I noticed all the units I visited. Rank structure is kind of different. Everyone has a squad leader, but it's less of a rigid hierarchy in terms of how they treat each other. There's less of that rank pulling, where you tell people what to do, which is often everyone's least favorite part of the military. It's less of a dick measuring contest out here. Something a lot of guys can probably relate to is infighting, where you don't get along with other guys in your unit, or you have someone that you really can't stand and you fight with all the time in your squad. Here I didn't really see any of that. I'm sure it happens, but overall I got the sense that there's less of that.
You walk me through what like a day in your life looks like.
So that's very ups and down, because it can be like some days we can wake up, we can go into a town, we can go to some restaurants, have some food, go do shopping, and then by lunch you're prepping and then you go out in the field. Because when we're not out on position, you still live in your AO. We do not leave the AO, but we live a normal life. We can go to the range, do some training. If we do not do that, you do everything you can to relax. You can go, as I said, into a restaurant, go eat food, and then 5 hours later you're sitting in your position trying to defend it from a Russian assault. It sounds a little bit crazy, like you sit in a restaurant at 12 and at 4 you're stopping a mechanized Russian assault, but it's a simple life. When we're not on position, we try to live as comfortable and relaxed as possible.
The back and forth juxtaposition between normal life and hell kind of made sense to me in a weird way. It goes to show how fast life can switch from peace to horror. I was surprised by the sheer volume of firepower they carried with them. They needed enough supplies to last for about a week. And by supplies, I mean mainly ammo, lots and lots of ammo and grenades stuffed into assault packs.
Oh, holy shit. What's in here?
That's the light one. That would be my assault pack, so I'd be using that simply for assaulting any positions. So I'd be running extra explosives in there, extra ammo, and a little bit of food and water, typically. And that's an assault pack. That's not an overnight pack.
Can you open it?
No. Sorry.
For your eyes only?
Yeah.
But maybe there are rocks there.
It's just cement, that's why you can't.
Yeah. And then this is my 3-day pack right now. The only thing I'm missing off of right now is my sleeping system, because I'm sleeping here tonight, and then my winter jacket, which I shove in this compartment here. Mostly this is just food and ammo in there right now. Go ahead, lift it. Yep.
Too easy.
I have to admit, I complained about 120 something pounds that I had to carry as a saw gunner. The intensity here is on another level. This part of the front has been one of the most static over the past year or so. There hasn't been a lot of movement or change of territory recently. Having the benefit of digging deeper trenches has been useful for that. But there's still an attritional battle here, and Bucket gave me some insight into that aspect of the war.
Let's say we kill 10, they send 50. If they kill 1, we send 1 or 2 to replace. Just like that's the difference that we're struggling with. But more or less everyone from the Ukrainian side fight as good as they can and as hard as they can. And if we weren't outnumbered, we would take them on soldiering. and weapon systems, because we have what is better, I would believe at least, and from my experience, and our training is much better from what I've experienced so far, because of course you have someone who's a little bit more lazy, but overall I would say that we're much more trained than what an average Russian soldier is, because most of them are just conscripts. Russia, maybe in some AOs they give you, let's say, 10 shells a day, where they don't really hit you, and some of them are just duds. We can send 30 shells direct hit on position, but we will hit, they will miss. So our mortar and artillery systems works very, very good, but we have to be a little bit careful, because like if we shoot 30 shells in a day, we have to make sure we hit, because we lack ammunition. So we don't shoot to shoot like the Russians do. Now that they have the North Korean ammo, it's picking up a little bit in some AOs, but not too much, because a lot of what they send doesn't really work. But then we also have FPV drones. FPV drones that's a new kind of war, and it sucks, especially for infantry, because they will target us as well as we will target them. That's quite scary, because you can have big explosives under it, and that's very dangerous, and that's something both sides works. But when we use it, it works very good, I would like to say.
Some of it just boiled down to numbers game like that. If you had more limited ammo, you need to make it count more and be more accurate and better trained. I tried to get a better sense for how the trenches were physically laid out. The squad made it to the infiltration point. I watched them load up into the back of the pickup truck. This part is one of the most dangerous because they were within artillery and rocket range here. When they got to the trench, they did their routine of improving the defensive positions. The other squad arrived back here at the exfiltration point to make it back to the safe house. This then repeats over and over, wash, rinse, and repeat, until one side loses a position and has to fall back. From what I saw in this particular direction, there were tons of dragon's teeth, razor wire, and backup trench systems for miles and miles. When I left the Foreign Legion, I hoped that these guys would make it back home safely. I've gotten a lot of questions on my Instagram and X account @CappyArmy, where people have asked me how they could donate to and help these units that are here in these videos. If you are so inclined and interested in donating to these guys, I've included their information on the screen now. I can confirm and vouch for the fact that the money does go to getting them warm weather gear and fixing their vehicles, which break down from flat tires and broken suspension systems, so the money goes to good use. Thanks to Odoo, the all-in-one business management solution. The first app is free for life. Then access to the whole shebang starts for around $20 a month per user. Head over to odoo.com today to learn more and find out why they're such a great sponsor for this program.